Okay, continuing now our study for our MTA, we're going to look at interactive installs. This is for the 98-365 Windows Server Administration Fundamentals. Before we look at interactive installs, let's talk about what we are trying to do. Rather than carrying around a disk or a flash drive so that we can install on, say, 10 or 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 computers, install our server or even our Windows client systems, but in this case we're talking about installing server. Why not have the installation images put on a server in our server room, and then we can just dial in, so to speak. We can have our computers use what we call Pixie Boot to just join up into a network and install over the network. Now, most computers have built into them the capability of connecting over a network without an operating system in them. Now, what I've done already is to have the server installation files already on the desktop of this server. And we're going to pretend that this server is sitting in a server room somewhere. And let me open up this set of files here and take a look at them. I want you to see in this sources folder, we have a couple of files here that are very, very important. One is the boot. Let me see if I can go up here and find it. boot.wim. WIM stands for Windows Image. The other one is the install.wim. And it should be down here under I. So install.wim. Notice the install.wim is 4 gigabytes. Yes, indeed, that is the main Windows image. This is the actual installation image that we need in order to be able to install Windows. And this is on every installation disk. And this is the primary file that you need to install Windows. So this is going to be important for this this WDS, or Windows Deployment Service, that we're going to be talking about. So now I'm going to go ahead and open up the Server Manager, and what we're going to do is put the image on a WDS, or Windows Deployment Service server. So first we have to set up the role for this. So I'm going to add a role to this server. What we're going to do is set up this server in order to make it the server that other computers can contact in order to set up Windows Server 2019 or 2016 for that matter on those particular computers. So I'm just going to step through installing a role, and when I get to this where I can choose the roles, I'm going to choose Windows Deployment Services. That's the one that I want to install. I'll just go ahead and click Next here and step through this until finally it will begin the installation. And there it goes. Now that the installation is completed, I'm ready to set this thing up, to put the images on it. So I'm going to go to Tools now and down to Windows Deployment Services. And here under the servers, I'm going to right-click this DC2. That's the name of the particular server that I'm on right now. My Windows Deployment Services is going to be on my DC2. I'm going to click Configure Server. All right, some things to note here. It says that the server, before you begin, ensure the following requirements are met. Now, I'm going to tell you right now I have not met these particular requirements. But I'm just demonstrating, and I have enough to demonstrate without meeting the requirements. So I need to make sure that the server is a member of an Active Directory Domain Services domain. Well, it is not a member of a domain. I have not set up a domain at this point. Or that it's a domain controller for an ADDS domain. If the server supports standalone mode, it can be configured without having a dependency on Active Directory. Well, I'm actually going to set it up as a standalone Windows deployment server. And that there is an active DHCP server on the network. Well, I do not have an active DHCP server on the network. This is because Windows Deployment Services uses the pre-boot execution environment, or PXE boot, which relies on DHCP for IP addressing. In other words, the PXE boot, when a client needs to get to the servers, it has to have this DHCP service in order to be able to do that, to find an IP address in order to get into the servers. Well, I'm not actually going to do that, so I'm not going to worry about it, but I would normally need a DHCP server. I also need to have a DNS server on my network, and I need to have an NTFS file system, which I do. Alright, I'm going to click next, but I don't have a domain, I don't have DHCP, and I don't have DNS set up. I'm going to make this a standalone WDS server. And now I have to say, well, where am I going to put my installation? Well, ahead of time, I went ahead and I set up a separate folder here, or a separate drive. I can't put it on my installation drive, my C drive. I have to have a separate drive. So in my virtual box, I set up a separate drive called the E drive, and then I set up a folder in that drive called the Server 2019 Installer folder. So I set that up ahead of time so that I could do this. And here I have some options. Do not respond to any client computers. Well, that wouldn't make much sense, because I do want to be able to respond to client computers who want to install Server 2019. Why would I not? Because if I want to push this out to client computers but not have them be able to pull it from me, then I would not want to respond. Respond only to known client computers so that I can't have hackers trying to pull out images, and then respond to all. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and respond to all. Do I want to require administrative approval? Well, typically, again, for security, I should, but for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to leave that unchecked, because we wouldn't be able to anyway without that DHCP and DNS. The next thing it's going to ask me then is to set up the actual files. So in just a moment here, it's going to say add images to the server now. So I'll click finish and then click browse, and I will go ahead and go to that desktop here. On the desktop, I have that folder that I showed you a little bit earlier, and that folder has all of the images built into it in the sources folder, but it will find it. I'll just click the parent folder to that, and I will let it find it, and I'll click next, and let me see, create an image group. So I'll just call this Server 2019 Basic Install. Now, why would I call this Basic Install? Well, it's also possible to capture an image from a computer that's already built out. And why would I want to do that? Well, I might actually have an image that already has built into it all of the software that I want to have on it. For example, I might want to have my Office suite already built into it and other software put on that device. Maybe I want to have the Chrome browser and maybe company software already put on and configured so that I don't have to add that as well. That's certainly possible to do. Now, if I did it that way, there's something else I have to worry about, and that is I don't want the same IP address and the same system ID numbers and so on. I have to do something called Sysprep. It's a big to do all that, and we're not going to get into that. In fact, this is far, far deeper than you need to know. All you need to know is basically what WDS does for your MTA. This is much deeper already than you need to know. So we're not going to get into all of that. But at any rate, this is just a basic install. In fact, it's an interactive install, just like we did with the disk, except it's over a network. So I'm just going to put basic install here. And now you notice it says number of install images 4, number of boot images 1. It's going to use that boot WIM image. That's the boot image. And then it's going to have, well, it only has, you notice it only had one install.wim. Why does it say 4 images? Well, remember that this is that image has built into it 4 possibilities: standard server core, standard desktop experience, data center server core, and data center desktop experience. Remember, this is just the installation disk, and so it has all 4 of those built into it. And so those are the options that it has. I'll click next, and it will look through all of those files and add all 4 of those images. Here's the boot image that it's adding right now, and then it will begin adding all 4 of the installation images that it has available to it. Let's just watch. Okay, now we have them all, I believe. Let's take a look at the install images. There's the Server 2019 Basic Install, and there are all 4 of them: Server Standard, Data Center, Server Core, and Regular, and then, or I should say Desktop Experience, and then our boot image. We have no pending devices, no pre-staged devices, no multicast transmission, and no drivers. We can put driver packages in here as well. And there we have it. Now we could PXE boot in if we had our DHCP, DNS, and domain controller running.